I never thought the lessons I learned in the army would become the same lessons that guided me through retirement, family life, and growing older. After 20 years of service, countless challenges, and more experiences than I can count, I discovered something important. The things we keep around us are often a reflection of the life we have lived and the wisdom we have gained. Although I no longer wear my uniform, the lessons I learned while serving have stayed with me every single day. The army taught me discipline, patience, and how to remain calm when things become uncertain. But the greatest lesson it gave me was understanding the value of preparation. You do not prepare because you expect something bad to happen. You prepare because you respect yourself, your family, and the life you have worked so hard to build. As I've grown older, I've realized that strength looks different than it did when I was young. When I was in the army, strength meant carrying heavy equipment, pushing through exhaustion, and proving that I could handle whatever challenge came my way. Today, strength means something much quieter. It means having your important documents organized, knowing your home is safe, being able to help yourself when you need to, and creating a place where the people you love feel comfortable and protected. Many of us spend our younger years building a life. We work, raise families, chase dreams, and overcome obstacles, but eventually, we reach a point where we begin to appreciate different things. We stop worrying about having more and start focusing on having what truly matters. A peaceful home, good health, meaningful relationships, and the confidence that comes from knowing we are ready for whatever life brings. Today, I want to share 5 things I always keep in my house. These are not expensive items or complicated systems. They are simple things that have given me comfort and confidence throughout the years. They are things I believe every home can benefit from, especially as we get older and begin thinking more about safety, independence, and peace of mind. The first thing I always keep in my house is a well-prepared first aid kit. Now, I know many people probably have a few bandages tucked away in a bathroom drawer or a bottle of medicine sitting in a cabinet. I used to think that was enough too. But my years in the army taught me that there is a big difference between having a few supplies and truly being prepared. During my early years of service, I learned that emergencies rarely happen at convenient times. They do not wait until everyone is ready. They do not happen only in dramatic situations. Sometimes they are simple moments that turn serious quickly. A small injury, a fall, a burn, or an unexpected accident can happen in a matter of seconds. I remember one night during my military service when one of the younger soldiers injured his hand while working with equipment. It was not a scene from a movie. There was no dramatic music or heroic moment. It was simply a person who needed help. What mattered was that we stayed calm, had the right supplies available, and knew what to do. That moment stayed with me because it reminded me of something important. Preparation creates confidence. When people panic, problems often become bigger. But when someone is prepared, they can focus on finding a solution instead of being overwhelmed by the situation. Years after leaving the army, I experienced that same lesson at home. My father was getting older, and although he was always independent, accidents can happen to anyone. One afternoon, he slipped while reaching for something in the garage. Thankfully, he was not seriously injured, but it reminded me that everyday moments can become unexpected challenges. Having a first aid kit nearby allowed us to handle the situation calmly. We did not have to search through the house wondering what we had or where something was stored. We were ready. That is why I believe every home should have a proper first aid kit. Not because we should live our lives expecting problems, but because we deserve the comfort of knowing we can handle them when they arrive. A good first aid kit is not a symbol of fear. it is a symbol of responsibility. If you have one in your home, take a few minutes to check it. Make sure supplies have not expired. Make sure your family knows where it is. Because the best emergency kit in the world cannot help you if nobody knows where to find it. And remember, preparation is not only about protecting yourself. Sometimes the person you are prepared to help will be someone you love. The second thing I always keep in my house is extra food and water. Now, when some people hear that, they immediately imagine someone preparing for a disaster or expecting the worst. But that is not the way I see it, and it is not what the army taught me. Being prepared is not about fear. It is about being responsible and making sure that when something unexpected happens, you can remain calm and take care of yourself and the people around you. During my years in the military, I learned that plans can change in an instant. You can prepare for one situation and suddenly find yourself facing something completely different. The people who handled those moments best were not always the strongest or the loudest. They were the people who stayed calm, thought clearly, and had prepared ahead of time. I remember being stationed away from home during a time when supplies did not always arrive exactly when expected. We learned quickly that having the basics available mattered. It was not about having everything. It was about having enough to keep moving forward. A little preparation made difficult situations much easier to handle. That lesson stayed with me long after I left the army. As I got older, I began to appreciate the simple comforts of everyday life in a different way. A full pantry, clean water, a warm meal. These things seem ordinary because we experience them every day, but they are actually some of the greatest conveniences we have. I keep extra food and water in my home because life does not always follow our plans. A winter storm can make travel difficult. A power outage can leave you unable to prepare meals the way you normally do. A family emergency can change your routine without warning. Having a few extra essentials means you can handle those moments with a clear mind. I remember a neighbor of mine named Margaret. She was in her late 70s and lived by herself. She was one of the most independent people I have ever met. She took care of her home, maintained a beautiful garden, and still enjoyed cooking meals for friends and family. She always reminded me of the strong women I met throughout my military career. One winter, we had a serious storm that made driving conditions unsafe for several days. I stopped by her house to make sure she was doing okay. I expected to find her worried about not being able to get to the store, but instead, I found her sitting comfortably with a cup of tea, watching the snow outside. I asked her if she was concerned about running out of supplies, and she simply smiled and said, "I learned a long time ago that you prepare during the peaceful times so you can stay calm during the difficult times." I never forgot those words because they perfectly described what I had learned in the army. Preparation is a gift you give your future self. You do not need to fill your home with supplies. You do not need to spend a fortune. A few extra items that you know how to use can make a tremendous difference. The goal is not to worry about tomorrow. The goal is to enjoy today because you know you have taken care of the basics. As we grow older, independence becomes more valuable. Many of us have spent our lives taking care of others. We raised children, supported our families, worked hard, and built homes that became places of comfort. Having some simple preparations in place allows us to continue living with confidence. That is why extra food and water will always have a place in my home. The third thing I always keep in my house is a reliable flashlight. Some people might think that sounds too simple to be important, but after everything I have experienced, I have learned that simple things are often the things we appreciate the most when we need them. During my time in the army, I learned that every piece of equipment had a purpose. Nothing was carried without a reason. When you are far from home and facing uncertain conditions, even a small tool can become extremely valuable. I remember nighttime exercises where darkness completely changed the environment around us. Places that seemed familiar during the day looked completely different after sunset. The ability to see clearly, move safely, and help others mattered. A flashlight was not just an object, it was a tool that provided confidence. Years later, I found myself applying that same lesson in my own home. One evening, a powerful storm moved through the area, and the electricity suddenly went out. The entire house became dark within seconds. Because I already knew where my flashlight was, I was able to handle the situation without stress. I did not have to search through drawers or use my phone battery trying to find my way around. I simply reached for it and turned it on. That small moment reminded me that preparation does not always involve major events. Sometimes it is about making everyday challenges easier. As we get older, safety becomes even more important. Walking through a dark hallway at night, checking a basement, or looking outside after hearing a strange noise can become much safer when you have proper lighting available. I also believe there is something symbolic about a flashlight. It represents the ability to bring light into difficult situations. It reminds us that even when something unexpected happens, we can find our way through it. A flashlight is inexpensive. It takes up very little space, but it provides something valuable: confidence. The army taught me that the people who prepare for small problems are usually the people who handle bigger problems with greater calm. That lesson has followed me throughout my entire life. Being prepared does not mean expecting trouble everywhere. It simply means respecting the fact that life changes and giving yourself the tools to adapt. That is why I always keep a dependable flashlight in my home. It is a small item, but sometimes the smallest things are the ones that matter most. The fourth thing I always keep in my house is something that does not take up much space, but it carries tremendous importance: my important documents organized and protected. This may not sound like the most exciting item on the list, but after living many years and experiencing many different stages of life, I have learned that organization is one of the greatest forms of preparation. In the army, organization was not optional. It was part of survival. Every piece of equipment had a place. Every instruction mattered. Every document had a purpose. When you are responsible for yourself and others, you learn that being organized saves time, prevents confusion, and helps you stay calm when things become stressful. After leaving the military, I brought that same mindset into my home. I make sure important information is kept in one place where it can be found when needed. Things like medical information, insurance paperwork, emergency contacts, financial records, and other important documents should not be scattered around the house or hidden away where nobody knows how to find them. I know this is not always an easy subject to discuss. Many people do not like thinking about emergencies or situations where someone else might need to step in and help. We like to believe we will always be completely independent, and for many years we are. But life has a way of reminding us that everyone needs support sometimes. Preparing these things is not a sign of weakness. In fact, I believe it is a sign of strength and love. It is a way of making life easier for the people around us. I learned this lesson when my own family needed to help my mother as she became older. She had always been a strong, independent woman. She was the type of person who rarely asked for help because she spent her entire life being the one who helped everyone else. but eventually there came a time when we needed to support her. During that period, one thing that made everything easier was knowing where important information was located. We did not have to search through boxes or worry about missing something important. We could focus on what mattered most, making sure she was comfortable and cared for. That experience changed the way I looked at preparation. Sometimes we think preparing is only about protecting ourselves from danger, but sometimes preparation is about making things easier for the people we love. A well-organized home gives you peace of mind. It allows you to enjoy your days without the constant worry of wondering if everything is in order. And I believe that peace of mind becomes more valuable as we get older. We spend decades working toward a comfortable life. We build careers, raise families, overcome challenges, and finally reach a point where we want to enjoy the fruits of our hard work. The last thing we want is unnecessary stress caused by things that could have been handled ahead of time. So take a little time to organize what matters. Put important information somewhere safe. Make sure someone you trust knows where to find it if necessary. It is a simple step, but it is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself and your family. The fifth and final thing I always keep in my house is something you cannot purchase from a store. It is something that has no price tag, but in my opinion, it is more valuable than anything else on this list. I keep connection. I keep relationships. I keep people close. Throughout my years in the army, I learned many lessons about teamwork and trust. When you serve alongside others, you quickly understand that no person succeeds completely alone. You depend on the people beside you, and they depend on you. You may come from different places, you may have different backgrounds, you may have different opinions, but when people share a common purpose, something powerful happens. They become a team. That lesson stayed with me after I left the military, because I realized it applies to everyday life too. As we get older, it can become easier to become isolated without even realizing it. Children grow up and move away. Friends become harder to see. Retirement changes our daily routines. The world becomes quieter. And while enjoying peace and quiet is wonderful, too much isolation can slowly affect us. I made a decision after leaving the army that my home would never just be a place where I slept and kept my belongings. I wanted my home to be a place where people felt welcome, a place where conversations happened, a place where someone could sit at my table, share a cup of coffee, and know they mattered. I keep extra chairs because I believe there should always be room for another person. I keep old photographs because memories are reminders of the people and moments that shaped our lives. I keep my phone nearby because sometimes a simple conversation can make a bigger difference than we realize. I remember one of my closest friends from the army, a man named Tom. After retirement, he struggled with adjusting to civilian life. For many years, his identity had been connected to his mission, his responsibilities, and the people around him. Then suddenly, those things changed. He had more free time, but he was unsure what his purpose was. One afternoon, I called him just to check in. I did not have any special reason. I was not calling because there was a problem. I simply wanted to hear how he was doing. We talked for almost an hour. We laughed about old memories. We talked about family. We remembered people we had served with. It was just a normal conversation. But years later, Tom told me that phone call meant more to him than I probably understood. That stayed with me. Sometimes we underestimate the power of small gestures. A phone call, a visit, a handwritten note, a meal shared together. These simple things remind people that they are not forgotten. And as we grow older, that feeling of connection becomes one of the most important things we can have. The army taught me how important it is to have the right equipment. Life taught me something even more important. The greatest strength we have is the people we surround ourselves with. Because no matter how prepared we are, life is better when we have someone to share it with. When I look back on my life, I realize that the army gave me many things. It gave me discipline when I needed direction, strength when I faced challenges, and friendships that have lasted longer than I ever imagined. But the greatest gift it gave me was a different way of looking at life. It taught me not to take the simple things for granted. When you are young, you often measure life by what you accomplish. You think about your career, your goals, the places you want to visit, and the things you hope to achieve. You spend years building a future, working hard, and doing everything you can to create a good life for yourself and your family. But as the years pass, your definition of success begins to change. You start to realize that the most valuable moments are often the quiet ones. A morning spent drinking coffee while watching the sunrise. A conversation with an old friend you haven't spoken to in years. A family dinner where everyone is gathered around the same table. A peaceful evening in a home filled with memories. Those moments may seem small, but they are the moments we remember. After nearly 2 decades in the army, I learned how important it was to always be ready. But growing older taught me something even deeper. I realized I was not just preparing for emergencies. I was preparing for peace. I was preparing for the years when I would finally have time to enjoy life. I was preparing to be there for my family. I was preparing to wake up each morning knowing that I had done what I could to protect the life I worked so hard to build. That is the true purpose of preparation. It is not about living in fear of what might happen tomorrow. It is about creating the confidence to enjoy today. When you have taken care of the important things, you can spend less time worrying and more time living. You can enjoy your hobbies. You can spend time with your grandchildren. You can take that trip you have always wanted to take. You can sit outside on a beautiful afternoon and appreciate the fact that you made it through all the difficult seasons of life. Because the truth is, every person watching this has overcome something. You have faced challenges. You have experienced loss. You have worked through difficult times. You have carried responsibilities that others may never fully understand. And yet, here you are, still learning, still growing, still finding reasons to smile. That is something worth being proud of. The 5 things I keep in my home are simple. I keep a first aid kit because I believe in being ready to care for myself and the people I love. I keep extra food and water because I know life can change quickly and preparation brings peace of mind. I keep a reliable flashlight because even the smallest tools can make difficult moments easier. I keep important documents organized because taking care of the future is one of the greatest gifts we can give our families. And I keep strong connections with the people around me because relationships are the foundation of a meaningful life. None of these things are complicated. None of them require wealth. None of them require a perfect life. They are simple choices that create comfort, confidence, and security. Over the years, I have met many people who believed strength meant never needing anyone else. For a long time, I thought that too. But age has a way of teaching us important lessons. Real strength is not pretending you can do everything alone. Real strength is knowing when to stand on your own and knowing when to reach out. Real strength is preparing for the future while still appreciating the present. Real strength is leaving kindness, wisdom, and love behind for the people who come after you. That is the kind of strength I value now. Not the strength of carrying the heaviest load, not the strength of proving yourself to others, but the strength that comes from living a life with purpose, the strength that comes from knowing you have made a difference, the strength that comes from looking back and knowing you gave your best. So now I want to ask you something. What are the things you always keep in your home? Maybe it is something practical, like a flashlight, extra supplies, or a well-organized folder of important information. Maybe it is something sentimental, like a photograph, a letter, a piece of jewelry, or an item that reminds you of someone special. Maybe it is something simple that has been part of your life for many years. Whatever it is, I would love to hear your story, because every home has memories, every person has lessons, and every generation has wisdom worth sharing. Sometimes the things we keep tell the story of who we are. They remind us where we came from, they remind us what we have survived, and they remind us what truly matters. Thank you for spending these moments with me. From my home to yours, I hope you continue to stay safe, stay strong, and appreciate every day you have been given. Remember, being prepared is not about expecting the worst. It is about making sure you are ready to enjoy the best. And after everything I have experienced, I believe that is one of the greatest lessons life can teach us.